Hello and welcome to Walford Weekly, your EastEnders podcast, where we talk about the soap EastEnders that is broadcast on BBC One from Monday the 14th to Friday the 18th of December in the UK. Every week I'm joined by my co-host, Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Rob, who, by the way, looks like a film star. Don't I, Alex?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do, Rob. You're quite
just
right.
Just to give some context here, you and Ben were watching a film earlier on this week.
Yeah, it's on Channel 5. It's like a Hallmark kind of Christmassy love film.
Yeah, for a start, Alex messages me and goes, "Are you watching Channel 5?" I'm like, no. And then apparently I looked like one of the film stars that was in this. I've been burnt by things like this before, so I said to Alex, before I click on images of who this guy is, beware that this may affect our working relationship from here on in. But I was impressed. I'll take that. It's a guy called Blake Lee, the guy without the beard. So I looked it up him online. I've never heard of him before. I'd never heard of the film. I doubt he's even been to Hollywood. The Christmas setup. But basically, this film star I thought was quite good looking, and I had a swagger for the rest of my day. It was excellent.
I am pleased. Who have you been compared to in the past?
Oh, you horrible man. Yes, I normally get told I look like Christopher Biggins. Right. Who's the astrologer? Oh, Russell Grant. I've been told I look like before.
Russell Grant.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? The insults I get.
But maybe we should start at Christmas time next year a Christmas podcast of all the Channel 5 films where we review them.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it would require me watching one.
Did you not watch that one all the way through?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
It looked rubbish. But was it good? Was it a good film?
How dare you? It was fine. It's like I say, it's a guilty pleasure for Ben and I. We watch these really awful but somehow lovable Hallmark style. They're not even Hallmark ones. They're not even the budget of Hallmark. No. They're like lower than Hallmark, which says it all really. And
it was like Channel 5 at 2 p.m, so it can't have been high budget.
And the general premise is basically white couple get together, white couple have some kind of Christmas panic dilemma, and then white couple...
Groundbreaking.
Put on Channel 5 at 2 o'clock. It's sandwiched between 2 episodes of Friends, because that's all Channel 5 show now. Yeah. Friends and Jane McDonald.
Finished, it's all they've got.
That's literally all they have. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Channel 5 and their TV schedule over Christmas.
Or how I look like a fit film star.
No, it's the penultimate week before Christmas week, so it's really building up. And we also have a special feature where we'll be talking about Chelsea Fox, because her return is planned very soon too. So keep listening for that. But to begin with, we are talking about Linda, Mick, and Max.
Well, I mean, yeah, it appears Max has managed to work his magic once again. I think it's his eyes, or possibly, or his words,
his white eyelashes. Is that what gets you?
Yeah.
Is it?
I think it must be. Okay, so if you think of absolutely everything that Mick and Linda have been through as a couple since they've been on the square, yes, it's a shame that it appears to have been tarnished now beyond repair. Do you think, realistically, that any couple in the world ever could survive what they have been through without one of them going off and having a full-on affair?
Oh no, I agree. In the real world, in the non-soap world, of course, their marriage would have been destroyed
long ago,
a very long time ago. I couldn't really pin a point. If anyone else could pin a point, please comment below. But now they're kind of a side project, which is a bit unkind thing to say, considering the story matter that we're just practically discussing, which is an historical sex abuse story. It feels as though that they've now chosen this as the time for Linda to kind of go a bit wayward. And what makes me angry isn't the fact that they're doing this to Linda and Mick. It's that Max is abusing the situation and using it for his own gain. And it's like, what kind of person does that? Well, obviously Max Branning, but it's even Jack, his own brother, has said to him, like, you are a sick man and you need to stop doing this. And Max and then as soon as he had that conversation with Jack, he goes to the laundrette and says, all right, you're looking a bit sexy in that tarp. And it's like,
literally.
Okay, well done, Max.
I mean, I thought that I agree. My point with Max, with when I was kind of thinking, really, Max, was right at the end of Friday's episode, where Linda turns around to him. She turned up at Max's house after Mick's basically brushed her off for his own reasons, obviously. She goes around to Max's in her sexy dress that she's tried to turn Mick on with, and then says to Max, "Can I have a glass of wine?" And Max's reply was, "Yeah, you don't need to ask my permission to do it." And Linda even said, what, because I'm an alcoholic? And he was like, no, it's nothing to do with it. Oh, it should be something to do with it, Max.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he was essentially just saying, like, essentially that is Linda now going to Max to drink alcohol just so Max can get laid, is essentially what's going on there. That's appalling.
Max is feeding her habit for his own gain. Yet again, this is what I mean. So he doesn't give a damn about Linda. He doesn't give a damn about Mick. All Max cares about is himself. And I know Max has always been a very selfish character, but oh my God, Max, this is beyond awful.
It's very in character for Max, though, really, isn't it? Especially when it comes to sex. He is so single-minded when it comes to that.
Yeah.
You know, and screw anybody else. As long as Max is getting some, he's happy. You know, it's essentially Max's character, and it has been ever since day one, really. Ever since he started, you know, having an affair with his son's girlfriend. If you could, you know, when Max eventually leaves, I think we should need to have a feature on all the affairs that Max has had since he's been on the square, because it will take about 3 hours.
I was going to say, it'd be a very long show.
Very long show.
The one good thing I feel could come out of this is perhaps this is obviously Max's leaving storyline, or seems to be Max's leaving storyline. Could there then be some way that they could... Well, I suppose they can't change it now because they announced that he finished his last scene yesterday.
He's done now.
EastEnders loves doing problem stories where they kind of look at a problem and then delve into it. Could they not do... And I personally can't think of any soap, not even Hollyoaks, a sex addiction story where someone's getting help and you find out where it stems from. That would interest me, and that would make my opinion of Max turn round, and I would be interested in that. But right now, Max is absolute scum, and I hate that people are justifying it by saying, oh yeah, but Mick's being horrible to Linda. Yeah, Mick's being horrible to Linda, but that's because Mick's being manipulated by Katie, and all Linda seems to want is this affection from Mick, which is quite right. And Mick is giving it to her. Sometimes affection is more than just getting a lay. She now thinks that he doesn't want anything to do with her. She's being seen as just like this mother, someone who's looking after their children, and that's all she's good for.
What I think we're learning about Linda, especially since she became an alcoholic, she's very vulnerable. And when alcohol is sort of around her, when she's needing a drink, she needs distractions, and she needs Mick, and she needs somebody to somebody to hold her, tell her that it's going to be okay. And Mick just isn't in that frame of mind at the moment. You know, I feel that the way Mick is at the minute, just being horrible to everybody, you know, and we know the reasons that he's doing it. It doesn't mean that it's not frustrating to watch at times. That is maybe an understandable reaction from Linda. I'm not excusing it, but I think that it doesn't feel as if it's been thrown in just for the hell of it. You know, I'm not saying that I like it, and I'm not saying that it's not a really huge shame that this once untouchable couple have now sort of transgressed into most couple story on EastEnders, that one of them has an affair at some point, and one of them has an affair with Max at some point, seems to be the go-to as well. Because I think we've had a lot of build-up to it in terms of the Linda and Max stuff specifically. It didn't offend me as much as I thought it was going to when it eventually happened. And what I quite liked at the end of Friday's episode was the way that, get me praising music and stuff, because it was coming from Max's telly, so that makes it fine. But it was framed as, and felt like, a very big moment for Linda as a character. When she went upstairs with him, the way that they filmed it and the way that they built it up, and it felt like a huge Linda moment. Something that, when we talk about Linda's character in times to come, we'll mention this moment when she eventually slept with somebody other than Mick, rather than it just seeming like a random one-night stand that we'll forget about in a few months' time. Do you know what I mean?
I would always look back at it really sadly, though.
Oh, I agree completely. I'm just saying that I like the fact that it felt like an actual character moment, which I would argue is not a huge feature in this particular era of the show. We don't really look at those big character moments. It's more about story moments at the moment, isn't it? If I had to glean some positivity about Linda having an affair, that would be it.
Spoiler.
La 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 la.
Yeah, stick your fingers in your ears, Rob. Spoiler, they're doing a flashback, because of course they are, with Mick. They've cast a young Mick, so there's going to be... Yeah, so I'm presuming there's going to be a young Stuart as well. I'm hoping that young Stuart is bald, because that'd be hilarious. And yeah, they're doing I think they're doing an episode where you're literally seeing what Mick remembers Katie had done, you're going to now see, and you're going to...
Well, that'll be cheery New Year's viewing.
Yeah, I know. I don't know when exactly it's going to be broadcast. I'm not sure if it's over Christmas Christmas or New Year.
Well, that sounds like, because I know that there's a Simon Ashdown episode coming up soon, and I know that he's writing one around New Year's time, so I suspect that'll be it, because I think Simon Ashdown is getting sort of special episodes at the moment. You know, he wrote the episode where Chantel died and all of that sort of thing.
Okay.
Well,
that
it seems like Simon Ashdown comes out of retirement whenever he needs a new kitchen or something and writes a special episode.
It's been a hard 2020 for Simon Ashdown. He needs to write a few scripts. Tina tried to help Mick, and Mick rejected her. So Tina went running to Shirley, and Gray has now had enough. Didn't take long. Of Tina, and Tina overhears. Tina really is like the child at the top of the stairs, isn't it? Listening to our parents argue.
She always is, though. Tina has always been the most immature woman. Whenever anybody reminds me of Tina's age, like, you know, when Ian did a few weeks back, saying, "What are you, 50?" It was like, oh my God, you are. Yeah. I've forgotten about that. It's like, you sometimes do forget that Tina is as old as she is because she's so immature.
Gray has basically said he doesn't mind Tina staying over Christmas so long as she cleans herself up, doesn't moan a lot, isn't a stroppy teenager.
Which is fair enough, really.
Which seems fair for a 57-year-old woman. And
not that old.
I don't know.
Same age as Shirley.
Okay, anyway, I'm really curious to know how old Tina is now. Just
off we go. You carry on talking. I'll go on Google.
Oh, okay. Carry on. I'll do the synopsis a bit more then. So,
yeah.
And Shirley agrees and says to Gray, absolutely not a problem. But this was within earshot of Tina. This little nugget and a few little nuggets that he's yelled at her a couple of times before. She's starting to think, hang on, this reminds me of a relationship I've been in before with Tosh.
Yes. Now, this was an interesting little thing, wasn't it? I thought, I was kind of like, she's 46 apparently, Tina. Yeah, I thought that kind of came out of left field a little bit.
It was an assumption that was a bit strange. I mean, we've had, just in case people want to listen, we've actually interviewed the actress who played Tosh. Listen back on our YouTube channel, we'll find it on your favourite podcast app. When we were doing the research, there was scenes where Tosh had her mother round and where Tosh was talking about Tina to her mother, almost talking down to her. So I'm presuming that's where the link is being found there, because Tina's being talked down to by Gray.
And Shirley, in all fairness.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it was quite a jump from Gray's a little bit narky because I've left my knickers on the side of the sofa too.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Gray might be an abuser.
Yeah, it was a bit of a leap. But, you know, I did enjoy it for what it was in terms of sort of the mention of Tosh and the parallels between Tosh and Tina and Gray and Chantel. It was an interesting sort of thing to have Tina cotton on to what was going on. Where this goes from here, who knows? Can't imagine that Tina's going to have a wonderful Christmas.
No.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I told you though, didn't I, that this story would start heating up again around Christmas time?
You certainly did. I put my hands up. I said that they seem to have just forgotten it, and literally, it's like they heard and they just put the scenes in. But I'm sure they
They filmed it all specially just to shut you up.
Yeah, they did it all Sunday. They heard the podcast Sunday morning and were in, like, right, everyone in Sunday morning.
Linda Henry had to come in on a day off. She was livid.
I bet she was. Shirley had said something to Tina as well about Gray, about how it feels like he can look after the kids right now. And then Tina, I mean, you shouldn't feed information to Tina like that.
No, that's the thing though. She told Tina everything about about when he was going to try and kill his kids and everything, didn't she? So to be fair, that might have led her down that path as well, in all fairness. I forgot that she found out about that, which
she didn't find out. Shirley told her.
Well, that's what I mean. So that was a very bad idea of Shirley. It's all going to kick off. It's all going to kick off now, isn't it?
It really is.
Really big style.
Wow, rubbing your hands together for death.
Absolutely. Death and destruction.
Tina Carter. Oh dear. Merry Christmas, Carters. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Someone who might be having a lovely Christmas, now married, of course, is Ian and Sharon. They've returned. Ian made a miraculous recovery after having a brain operation.
Seemed alright, didn't he?
He's
With
fine.
A nice little plaster on the back of his head.
Just absolutely not a problem whatsoever.
So I think he went to the same hospital as Phil did. Yeah. You know, when he had his big old brain knocked in, he had a little plaster.
It's miraculous what Walford Hospital can do. They're medical marvels.
You know why it's Sonia. Queen of the NHS.
Of course. That's why you never see her. It wouldn't surprise me if there had been a story that the COVID vaccine actually had been found in the Walford University Hospital or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Invented by Sonia. That's why she's been away for so long. She's been inventing the vaccine for COVID.
Can you imagine if that was the story?
Yes!
Sonia.
Of course I can.
Sonia was the creator of the new COVID vaccine. So where were we? So Sharon and Ian are married. Suki has video evidence that she's threatening Ben with.
Yes.
In a wonderful scene with the Mitchells having a showdown between Suki and Phil.
Talk about this scene for a moment.
Yeah.
So, yes, now, again, with what we were saying last week, because we feel that we've worked out who duffed Ian quite early on in the process. So now everything else that was going on around him that night that we're being kept in the dark about is far more interesting than actually working out who attacked Ian. And the Suki storyline is a perfect illustration of that, because by God, it was amazing this week. And I think I said to you a few weeks ago that I really wanted a confrontation between Phil and Suki.
And did we get one?
I? And did we get one? Yes, we did. Because, Suki has obtained CCTV of Ben leaving the Vic on the night of Ian's attack. Promptly decides to ask for $100,000 in response.
Well,
which I don't think is unreasonable.
No, well, it started at $10,000, which Ben gave her, and then she was like, "Actually, you fool."
Yeah, well, she went down the alley route, didn't she?
Yeah, she was like, "Well, he's given him this so easily once, so I can do it again," which is such a rookie mistake. As a Mitchell, Ben should know better.
He really should.
And Ben then goes basically crying to his dad for help.
Yeah, and then there's a little scene where sort of Phil decides that he needs to talk to Ben. Callum's in the room, perfectly illustrating what I was saying last week about how pointless Callum is in the Mitchell household in terms of his position in life. And Phil literally just turns around to him and goes, "If I wanted you to know about it, I'd tell you, get out." And Callum just leaves dutifully with his tail between his legs. I do feel sorry for him.
I do too. That relationship between them has pretty much just died, hasn't it? I mean, Callum was so happy, wasn't he? He was so happy when he was like, "Oh, me and your dad are like that," you know? And we're best friends. And now it's like, get out the room.
Yeah, no, it's really not. I do feel for him. Phil's response to what Suki is doing is to go round to the offices and start smashing it up with a baseball bat, or rounder's bat, according to Suki.
I love that he got it out from it was like a samurai sword. He it was sheathed in his coat, wasn't it? And exactly. It was like, again, Star Wars. Someone please add the Star Wars sound effects to when Phil was doing that. If you don't, I might. It's like zoom.
I would quite like to believe that Phil has in all of his outfits just a gap or a massive long pocket for a bat to be placed into at any opportune moments that he desires.
His back jeans, back pocket, is just one long pocket down his leg, ready to sheath his baseball bat.
Yeah. But Phil went into sort of Phil smash mode, and Suki appears in the office and just ends it there and there, really, doesn't she? And because this is the thing. He starts getting all threatening and implying that he was going to hit her with the bat, which we knew that he wasn't going to do, because Phil only tends to do that sort of thing when he's really drunk. So Suki was never at any risk.
But Suki knew that, and that's what was so this power
read the
game
scene perfectly.
Because Suki was there, and she went, "Go on then," and it doesn't even a speed of sweat or anything. Just go on then.
Nothing. It's a raise of the eyebrow, which we love.
And Phil was just stood there, and you could see Phil was like, "Well, no,
stop it,
stop it!" Yeah, why did you do that? That's my only weakness. Actually, telling me to do something. Why? Yeah.
And then Suki's like, "No, this ends when I say it does." Yeah. And then we don't, and that was the end of a scene, and it's. I love that woman so much.
Just delicious.
I want this Phil and Suki thing to be an ongoing thing. I don't want it just to be for this story. I want them to hate each other for the rest of time, and for them to be constantly at war, because, we need to sort of be thinking about the future. And Phil, best will in the world, much as I love him, he's not going to be around forever. But do you know what I mean? They've got to plan for other gangster people, or, people wwho are top dog in the square. The Panasars have slotted into that really quite nicely, so they need to be building that up. And first audition for that sort of role is to take on Phil, really, isn't it? And many have tried over the years, and many have failed, and I finally think that in Suki we have somebody that could quite easily bring Phil down.
Okay, so would you say then, or would you think that Panasars are the Mitchell empire ending? This is basically
I think it's potential.
Yeah, I think so.
I really
too.
Do you know what they remind me of? The closest that I think that the Mitchells have come to being quite threatened remind me of the DeMarcos a little bit.
Oh, really?
No, but just in the way that they instantly took on the Mitchells, and it seemed like there was a little bit of unevenness for the Mitchells at that point. I know Grant was still around then, so he Phil had a bit more help. But I think that, now Phil's older, he does his best, but he's ready to retire. I think.
Ready for his pipe and slippers.
Yes, and I think that the Panasars are a good call to sort of step into that role when the moment comes. I know you said that you were thinking about maybe putting them in the Vic, which would also work, because they seem to be quite an adaptable family in terms of story.
Yeah, they have to go in the Vic. That's just rule.
The law.
Again, my demands are increasing. They must go in the Vic. I mean, it's great It's great that Sharon's got the Vic. I'm happy for Sharon, but we know that the marriage with Ian Beale's story hasn't got legs really. It's
no,
not like the legs that Sharon has. Let's just say. And
who has?
Going back to your DeMarco point real quick, I think the problem was that a lot of people didn't like the DeMarcos, probably because the Mitchells were at the height of their game. Now we're seeing that the Mitchells, as you quite rightly said, aren't quite at that peak that they used to be, and more people seem to be on board with the Panasars kind of taking over this role.
Bear in mind, because of what has happened to the Mitchells over the past few years, and they've sort of been disintegrated as a family unit over the past few years, you're left with Phil, Ben, Jay sort of, but not really anymore, and that's about it.
But the Panasars seem to be building up. Obviously, we've lost Jags, but that's no big loss.
Well, yeah. No, it's not. And the Panasars can be added to now as well. Obviously, we've got Uncle Roger to come at some point, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Roger! Oh, I can't wait for Uncle Roger to come.
He'll definitely turn up.
Definitely.
Apparently, Suki has a whole empire of people in prison just waiting to sort of obey her every command.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They've got a cousin who's looking after Jags at the moment because Ben made the threat to be a fly on the wall in that office to see the pictures of Jags being bullied in prison.
What was with those pictures?
I wish they'd asked the actor to come back or just superimposed a face on someone kind of cowering in the corner. Honestly, I would pay good money for the EastEnders to have mocked up those pictures. I mean, they've mocked up pictures in the past. Couldn't they not have done that with Jags? It would have made my day. It would have made my Christmas if they could have mocked up a picture of Jags just looking scared and crying and just
I want more from them, because I do feel at the minute that someone like Vinny, for example, we haven't seen him for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I want to learn more about them as a family unit. I get, we've got it now. Suki is in charge. Her kids are terrified of her, essentially, which is lovely. And she is quite capable of handling herself and sorting out all the family dramas. That's great. Now I want to know about them as characters. I want to see a more vulnerable side of Suki. I love watching her like this, in this sort of evil villainess role with her fabulous eyebrow. But, I need more from her. I need layers to Suki for her to be there forever, because otherwise she has a shelf life, and that's the last thing we want for Suki. I was really interested by Kheerat this week, not as much as you were, I'm sure. He's going against his mum. That's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward.
I don't think he meant to go against his mum, though. I think the plan was he was meant to beat up Peter, wasn't he? But then it got a little bit. But then it got a little bit out of hand because then Ian got involved. That's why. Can you imagine?
As Ian is wont to do.
Of course he is, and that's why Ian's blood was in the van, and so that's what bent Suki out of shape a little bit, because something that was meant to be a very clean cut job, inverted commas, to ended up being a lot more messier than it should have been, and she's now got Kheerat to kind of organise it for her, organise it for the family so it can be covered up. But then from him doing that, he gave the CCTV footage to Ben without Suki's consent, so get ready for slap legs on that one.
Exactly.
And Kheerat had found something else in the CCTV footage, that Peter has done something.
I mean, it can only be, if it's from that same camera angle, which was visible with Ben leaving the Vic, which would have been the door that the paint was painted on. So presumably Peter is responsible for the spray paint that was on the door.
That's what I thought.
Because Peter is 8 years old, and that's his response to rebelling to his father to write "burn in hell" on the door of the Vic. Ooh, scary Peter.
Ooh, frightening. He's kind of fits Peter's character a little bit, that he's this kind of
sullenly sort of
yeah, he just doesn't really know how to. He's got these grand intentions in his mind that he's going to be really meh and angry at everyone, and then when it comes down to it, he writes a horrible message on a door. It's like, nah, Peter. Peter's still not appealing to me. He's still not growing on me at all. Not at all.
He's not, to be fair, he's not doing himself a huge amount of favours at the moment in terms of trying to make himself look likeable, is he?
No.
It's not very often that I'll be on Ben's side for something, but when he was sort of going up to Peter and giving him sort of, being all leery at him, it was kind of like, yeah, go on, Ben, sort him out. Because he's just not being likeable at all at the moment.
So yeah,
to be fair, he hasn't got naked as much as the old Peter used to.
No, maybe that would.
Maybe that's why we don't like him.
Yeah, get more naked. There you go. That will sort it all out.
There you go. So what was the plan? The plan was from Suki. Interestingly, she called them orders, which I liked.
Yeah.
There's such an interesting dynamic of this family that I want them to scratch away at, and I'm really scared they're not going to. I want to know more. Kheerat to beat up Peter.
Yes, to teach his dad
to teach Ian a lesson. Ian somehow gets in the way and ends up being, banged against the van, which is why there was blood inside the van.
That's another thing. Was it inside the van or was it on the side of the van?
I don't know what I mean. That's what I mean. Maybe there's more to explain that we're going to know about from that, because I don't feel like we've got the full story on that yet. Because it didn't make a lot of sense, really, did it?
No, I mean, is that all on the CCTV as well? The beating that Kheerat had done. I suppose it must have been.
I'm not sure, actually.
Because if it was, then Kheerat has just given Ben evidence against them.
Evidence, yeah, exactly. Well, I don't think he's done that. It can't have been then. No.
Kheerat's got that on his computer. He's only given Ben the USB stick, the memory stick of it. But it's in the cloud probably as well, because it's maybe been shared between like all the Panasars because they're just for a good laugh,
Yeah.
Because that's what the Panasars like, I suppose. But and
over their fish fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, oh, have you seen this? Someone getting beaten up. It's such a tricky thing when they do stories where someone has a digital evidence of something that they've done. It's not like in the old days when they had like a photographic evidence, and so if they burnt the negatives, that was the end of it.
That had been developed at Boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the person who developed the photos had to be disposed of as well. Those were the days.
the 80s. But so, you see what I mean? But with a digital copy, Kheerat's got a copy now on his computer. Ben's got a copy on his memory stick. Presumably it might be in a cloud somewhere, because if he has like a digital backup, then it must be in some kind of cloud. So
yeah,
it's
around somewhere still.
This could go on forever and ever and ever and a day. And this is just kind of going a bit off tangent, but it just confuses me how they can ever say that Ben is out the clear now, or the Panasars are out the clear now, because there's always going to be this digital copy somewhere in the world.
Ben is clearly hiding something else that went on that night. Which I'm presuming is that he walked in on Sharon attacking Ian, is my guess.
Keeping it quiet?
Yeah, that's my guess. So, because I can't imagine what else he was doing in the Vic. If he didn't attack Ian, I can't imagine what else he was up to that makes it so vital that he gets that footage back.
Yeah, I mean, they're showing lots of flashbacks. They're kind of showing clips of flashbacks in the episodes, but they're showing the full flashback on their social medias. And so I think that what you're meant to do is kind of watch those flashbacks as supplementary, as extra clues. Yeah. Do you remember the TV show Cluedo? On ITV, when they used to play out scenes of like all the actors. It was basically the board game, but in a TV mystery game show. Yeah,
presented by Chris Tarrant of all people.
It was Chris Tarrant, and Christopher Biggins was in it as well. There you go.
Who? I don't know who you mean.
And so it reminds me a little bit of that. So what they used to do is like one of the contestants used to be, oh, I remember Colonel Mustard saying blah 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 blah, and then Chris Tarrant would turn around and say, that's opened up this file, and then you see like this scene where you see Colonel Mustard. It reminds me a little bit of that. So it's encouraging the audience to do their own sleuthing into who they think duffed Ian. We all know it's Sharon, but let's pretend we didn't.
Can you imagine if it's not Sharon?
I know, I'm just thinking.
Just say this.
Egg on our face.
There will be people who work on EastEnders who might be listening to this now, absolutely wetting themselves at how smug we are.
I know.
That we've worked, and me especially, that I've said that I worked this out weeks in advance because I heard a text message tone that could have really been anything. But yeah, I think that the way that they're doing it is quite interesting, and let's be honest, we are stuck with this whole sort of clever editing thing, so there's no point in whinging about it every week, so I may as well just go with it. It's working for this story, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I actually like, and it's about time they started using their social media a little bit more. They used to be fine. Someone posted this week on Twitter saying like, oh, do you remember EastEnders website, how good it used to be? And it's like, yes, I do remember that. It used to have games on it, it used to have webcams, you could see parts of script before it was aired. Clearly moved off their website because it's barren. They've still got characters on there, character profiles on there, which are about 10 years old, genuinely.
Is the game still on there?
No, they're not. However, I did do.
Oh, that's a shame.
I did do a YouTube video where I found the old games and I played them. Link will now be on the video screen if you're watching this on YouTube. So they are starting to use their Twitter and their Instagram a lot better, rather than just kind of showing this was tonight's duff, watch the whole episode by clicking on this link, which is so dumb. Why would you watch an episode of EastEnders if you know what the conclusion is?
Yeah, no, please do stop doing that, because for a start, I sometimes don't see the episode live, so you ruining the duff isn't fun, thanks.
Yeah, but that's what they're saying. They're saying, if you've not watched the episode live, this was the duff, now watch the episode. It's like, stop that. That's ridiculous. That's the dumbest thing ever. It's the dumbest thing ever. Why would you say, basically in a trailer of a film, would they say, this is the ending of the film, watch our film? No, you wouldn't. Yeah. So stop.
It's like revealing who attacked Ian at the start of the story. Now watch the rest of the story. No, I won't.
It's just so counterproductive. Can we talk about Callum shouldn't have been a police officer, he should have been a counsellor all along, and how he calmed Bobby back down again this week?
That was lovely. I was really pleased to see that, because I genuinely didn't think that they were ever going to reference Bobby and Callum's relationship ever again. And it was really, really nice to see. And again, it's one of those things that just makes Callum look so much better than Ben.
Yes.
Such a nicer person than Ben. Yeah. And prove again that Callum deserves so much better than Ben Mitchell. And I can only assume that Ben is absolutely fantastic in bed, because there's no other reason why Callum would still be with him at this point, I feel.
But yeah, so Bobby basically admitted that he counts and he's got this problem, and Kathy's like, I never saw it. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Why didn't I see it? And Bobby openly said, well, Peter saw it, did nothing about it.
Did nothing. Yeah.
Kathy straight away then was like, uh-oh, Peter's a manipulator. Rightly so, gives him a good telling off, a good rundown.
Storms to the Vic.
Yeah.
In true Kathy fashion. Yeah, and it was good to see, and sort of Peter feels a bit humiliated and sort of responds, well, yeah, Dad. And then storms out again in typical Peter fashion. But yeah, no, the Callum and Bobby stuff was really nice to see. I want more of that. I want more of their relationship to sort of develop. And it was also nice the other day, last week as well, where they sort of referenced the Ikra and Bobby relationship as well.
Yeah.
I think, I sometimes don't give them enough credit that they establish these nice little moments between characters and then leave them for weeks, and you kind of think, oh, you've forgotten about that now, I want that back, and then they'll go back to it when it's relevant in the story.
Last week you mentioned that you found it quite difficult to kind of relate to Bobby's story with the OCD.
Yes. We had a message.
When they talked, when Bobby and Callum talked to one another, Bobby did do a reference that I had said on the show last week, which is, it's a bit like leaving your gas on, or you think you've left your gas on when you've left the house. And I said, is that, maybe it's a bit like that, but notched up to 11. So did you feel like you kind of understood Bobby a little bit better after his conversation with Callum?
Yes, I did. And I felt that I maybe it was perhaps a tad ignorant last week about the exactly what OCD can do to somebody and sort of the places that it can take you to. Yeah, I felt that it was explained nicely this week. And you sort of saw things from Bobby's perspective a little more. I mean, it's just, where does Bobby go from here is my big question.
Bobby's story for me has always been, even when he was first brought back into the soap, wasn't about whether evil in Bobby is manifested that he is just a bad child, a bad kid. It's always been, for me, his recovery from his killing his sister, his prison time, and trying to fit himself back into the family unit. And they were doing that quite nicely when he found religion, and they did that. I really like the story when Kathy, to be fair, Kathy and Ian didn't understand his kind of turn into the Muslim religion. I love that Kathy reported someone like thinking he was a terrorist.
Oh my God, it just reminded me of the amazing Kathy line this week when she was talking. When Bobby was talking about the OCD thing and talking about the counting, and Kathy just, is that an Islam thing?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I love Kathy's just pure and utter ignorance of many facts.
The thing with Kathy is that she's willing to learn, so she's not afraid of making silly questions, saying ridiculous things that to us is a bit like, oh, for God's sake, Kathy.
Is that for gay photographers, for example?
Oh yeah, or when she was going to start up the Prince Albert, and like Tina and Ben were discussing the kind of gays and lesbians there are out there.
Yes.
And Kathy was just surprised to hear a lipstick lesbian and like bears and otters.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, an otter,
But you're right, though. This is a different Bobby to the Bobby that we had who pulled the legs off Marilyn the tarantula.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, and I love Bobby, and I love Journey, and I want to see this. I want to see him develop, and I want to see him getting into a relationship, and I want to see him sort of expanding outside of the Beale network and sort of becoming his own person. Because I do like the pace that they do with Bobby. We've said time and time again how amazing the Lucy Beale story was for it still to be so relevant, 5 years later? And that's no more evident than in Bobby as a character, who is clearly still so affected by it. And the Beales as a family unit are still so affected by it. There is still so much anger and resentment and unspoken issues there.
Well, the whole story with Ian, really, the Bill perspective was the fact Peter's resentment toward his dad and Bobby for covering up Lucy's death.
And that's still there. And I'm pleased actually that Peter went in the direction that he did with that this week, because we said a couple of weeks ago when Peter and Bobby sort of had a moment, and we were concerned that was it. That was just tying a little bow on that aspect of the story, and it clearly wasn't. Peter was just using Bobby for his own reasons, and clearly has not forgiven Bobby for any part of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's good. I'm glad that that's still a bone of contention between them, and frankly, long may it be so, because realistically, it would be.
I don't know whether my appeal to Peter would be improved if there was a bit of forgiveness there toward Bobby, but you're right. I suppose there may never be that forgiveness. I just remember that when Peter left, when it was the old Peter, and he left with Lauren, there was that last speech, that last conversation he had with Bobby on the bench on the war memorial.
That was lovely.
It's weird that since Peter's been away, this hate has kind of manifested it.
Well, he's got more bitter about it, hasn't he?
Yeah, but he left. He seemed to leave on good terms with Bobby, and now he's returned those. Oh, I don't want to use the term, but I'm going to. They've rewritten Peter, and they've made Peter now really bitter and angry about it.
It's similar to how Bobby's reacted to it in a way, though, because I'm sure when Bobby was in prison, yes, he was in prison, but he was away from the surroundings of the square and away from the house in which it happened, because that clearly had a very strong psychological effect on him when he came back, because he was hallucinating and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's possible, actually, that's more than possible. I think that's what's happened to Peter as well. He went as far away as it's possible to get from the situation. He went to New Zealand, for God's sake, and sort of lived there for a while. And then you go back to Albert Square, Ian for a dad, and you're reminded how useless he was over the years. And then you're back in the living room where your twin sister was bludgeoned to death by your younger brother.
And Bobby also seems to kind of bring it up a lot, which is probably quite infuriating for Peter.
Yeah, exactly. And Peter's got all of this attempted forgiveness going on around him that he doesn't believe is real, and he's angry that it's even there. So I can kind of see why he would still be angry about it. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, where does it go from here? Is this? I mean, I've got no issues with Bobby and Peter forever being at loggerheads of each other, but it's kind of like we need to see that journey take place now.
Okay, so we're onto our feature now for a character that is returning next week.
Yes, Chelsea Fox is returning, and we are now going to look at Chelsea Fox in her This Is Your Life section. This Is Your Life for Chelsea Fox. Now, Chelsea Fox was born on the 20th of May 1986 for the Stat fans. Her mother is Denise Fox and her father is Lucas Johnson. She arrived on the square on the 2nd of May 2006 and she originally appeared in 343 episodes till her departure on the 5th of August 2010. Played originally by Tiana Benjamin, and when she returns she will be played by Zara Abrahams. Now, like any self-respecting Walfordian, Chelsea did not have an easy life in Albert Square. When she first arrives, she gets a job at the local video store. Remember video stores, Alex?
I do. Was it run by Billy at the time?
It was. Billy, I had to do a bit of research about this because I completely forgot about this video store. And yeah,
Walford
Billy
Videos.
randomly, Billy did originally own it at some point. Now, Chelsea's plan was to take the job so that she could have the flat above the video shop. So that she could move out of her mum's, but the lease falls through and she's stuck with a job that she doesn't particularly enjoy. But the first time we meet her, she is being hassled by a delivery driver, sort of trying to chat her up, and it's all very weird, and is then sent on his way by Grant Mitchell. Now, Chelsea is instantly smitten. So yes, when we first meet her, she gets into a brief little romance with Grant, which Denise quickly uncovers what is going on, and the brief romance comes to an end. From there, Chelsea gets a job working at Tanya Branning's salon, where she quickly falls for Sean Slater. Now, Sean being Sean, uses her for sex and goes around having liaisons with other women, including Tanya, and Carly Wicks.
Carly Wicks. Oh, I loved the Wicks.
Yes.
Oh, Shirley's daughter.
Yes, it must be. Yes, it is, yes.
With the guy from the Park Life music video. I never remember the actor's name. But he does the Cockney bits. It's the same guy.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That's interesting. Yes, so in an attempt to keep Carly away from him, Chelsea sets her on a date with Warren Stamp. Remember him?
No, I don't. Warren
No.
Stamp.
Do you know who played him? Will Meller, the guy from 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's yeah. I remember. Yes, I do remember him. Yes. God, how long was he in the soap for?
Well, exactly. I had no memory of him being in it whatsoever. But he didn't play a particularly nice person because he ends up trying to assault Carly on this date.
Okay.
And Sean comes to the rescue, and then Sean and Carly begin to have a proper relationship, which leads to a huge animosity between Chelsea and Carly, which leads to Chelsea's sights being set on Dean Wicks. This is obviously a good few years before he a good few years before he became a rapist. Dean has his eyes on Chelsea and fancies her, and Chelsea uses that to her advantage to try and sabotage Carly and Sean's relationship. Now, around the same time, Patrick is attacked in the shop and is mugged. Dean and Chelsea try to frame Sean for the attack by stealing the CCTV from the shop. Carly ultimately ends up finding the stolen footage, gives it to the police and clears Sean's name, which leads to a really good scene which I watched on YouTube when I was doing this, where Denise finds out what happened, slaps Chelsea and then drags her across the square to Patrick's, absolutely humiliating her in front of the entire square. It's a really intense, well-acted scene.
Chelsea was always a disappointment, I always thought, to Denise. Like, Denise was always very proud of Squiggle, but whenever it came down to Chelsea, she would always do something wrong, and Denise would always be a bit like, oh, for goodness sake. Had to be you, Chelsea, didn't it? Had to be you.
Yeah,
I always found that was their dynamic.
Yeah, that was a big thing for Chelsea's character when she was first in the show, because obviously, like we say, Squiggles was always, the university student, and Chelsea never felt that she could compete with that. Chelsea wasn't an unintelligent girl, but she certainly didn't have Libby's sort of perchance for academia. And so I felt that she was constantly sort of beating herself up about how much Libby must have been great in Denise's eyes compared to herself. And clearly didn't try that hard either.
Not really.
Because after this humiliation by Denise, Dean and Chelsea are sent to prison for 6 months for perverting the course of justice. They're let out after 3, and when she returns, this is when Chelsea wants to find her father, Lucas. Now, Lucas left Denise and Chelsea 20 years ago, and after a bit of searching around with the help of Libby, Lucas eventually turns up at the square. Now, this is also around the same time that Chelsea, one of Chelsea's bigger storylines when she was originally in it, when she began taking cocaine. And she gets herself into a lot of trouble, being beaten up by thugs, and she starts stealing money from the salon where she's working in order to fund her habit. Tanya discovers this, fires her, which results in Chelsea going on a bender. Now, Patrick catches her taking some coke, locks her in the room, which obviously is the best way to deal with any drug addict.
Of course.
Chelsea promptly escapes from this room via the bedroom window, and Lucas eventually finds her in R&R, hires a kite, and takes her home like the dutiful father he is.
What a nice guy this Lucas sounds like.
He's lovely. He's a lovely guy, Lucas. I think he'll be all right.
I think he's really going to fit in.
Yeah. Now, for a while, it seems that Chelsea's slowly getting back on the rails for a bit. She falls in love with a university student called Theo Kelly.
What is it with Chelsea and having boyfriends with stupid names?
Stupid names. Well, and also with Chelsea, she, like we were just saying, like a fish out of water around Theo and his university friends.
Oh, of course.
And eventually, there's another stupid name coming up here for a boyfriend. She eventually cheats on him with a footballer called Ellis Prince, who ultimately actually ends up giving her more drugs. And the two end up running away together. But Chelsea returns on Libby's birthday after Ellis apparently hits her. Chelsea returns. This is when the Lucas serial killer story starts to really heat up. Libby's grandmother arrives on the square to announce that Denise's ex-husband, Owen Turner, is to be released from prison. Remember Owen?
I do remember. This is the story that I love, and this is where Lucas is all fixed together, and
Yes. And sure enough, Owen arrives on the square, and soon afterwards him and Denise sleep together. But Owen is not a particularly nice bloke. He's a violent drunk, and eventually tries to hold Denise hostage. And Denise, by the way, gets out of that by stabbing him in the neck with a fork. I think that's a perfect way to deal with.
Seems reasonable.
Yes, grab the cutlery.
Although that's you could argue that's foreshadowing for something that Lucas does later on.
Oh, yes, that's a very good point. Soon afterwards, Owen is murdered by Lucas, and Chelsea instantly assumes that Denise killed him, because why wouldn't you think that about your own mother? Denise soon disappears, leaving only a text message saying how sorry she is on Chelsea's phone. And now what's actually happened in reality is Lucas has kidnapped Denise. He confessed to her about Owen's murder. Denise went slightly mad, and they ended up having a struggle. Lucas holds her hostage, having sent the message himself from Denise's phone, then throws the phone in the canal, after the discovery of a body, and everyone assumes that Denise is dead. Yes.
This story made me so angry about Chelsea, and I think this was the moment where I thought, you know what? I don't like you, Chelsea, because I remember this, and I remember everyone was desperately upset about Denise, being gone. And when Denise returned, everyone was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're back!" And Chelsea was like, "No, I've accepted your death, so I don't care anymore." And it's like, all right, Chelsea, calm down. No, I mean, Chelsea was always on a very fine line with me because she was very selfish, always looked out for herself. She didn't care really about anyone around her, but when a problem happened to her, the whole world had to know. This broke me about Chelsea because then, as he said, when Denise returned, she just literally was like, "Well, I don't care, so you're now dead to me." And it's like, "Oh, shut up, Chelsea."
That feeling does ultimately end in Chelsea's initial exit from the square, because when the truth is revealed, Lucas, holds everyone hostage and is eventually sent to prison for his crimes. And the fallout from it all is ultimately too much for Chelsea, and she leaves the square in the back of a taxi and moves to Spain. But yeah, that's sort of Chelsea's story. She's quite a selfish person. She's very sort of instinctive of her own feelings and not very caring about anybody else's. What aspects of Chelsea from any of that do you think that we're going to see when Chelsea ultimately returns?
I think she'll still be looking after Chelsea. Chelsea is more the most important thing in Chelsea's life. Although I know how she returns, I'm not going to ruin it for anyone. What I said just now about her kind of not being too accepting of her mum and almost blaming Denise for a lot of her problems and a lot of the problems that was associated with the family, I think that will carry on too, and I think that it will always. I think when Chelsea returns, she won't very easily take the side of Denise straight away. Let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting. I think EastEnders has always done these sorts of relationships very well between sort of parent and child, when there's problems between the two, and then very often, especially with people like Ben and Phil, Ian and any of his children, you can sort of wrong from both sides, can't you? Do you think that there was much wrong in Denise's upbringing of Chelsea, or do you think solely it was Chelsea's fault and everything that Chelsea did was by her own thing, or do you reckon that some of the resentment with Denise is justified?
I don't think Denise did anything wrong. She did the best of her ability as a single mother, looking after two little girls who grew up to be fair to Denise.
Two very different people.
But I think the resentment will always be that she thinks that she can never be as good as what Libby had become. And she probably blames her mum for that because her upbringing wasn't quite as fair, maybe. Maybe she felt like because Libby was the youngest that she kind of doted on her a bit more and she kind of left Chelsea to look after herself. But no, I would never blame Denise.
This isn't a bad mum, is she?
No, she's not a bad mum.
I don't think she's ever been one, really.
But look at it this week. We'll talk about Denise after this, but like how she's looking after Raymond. She's bending over backwards to make sure that Raymond is having a Christmas that he can relate to. A very gentle way of introducing him into the family. And she's not given up on him either. Denise always puts everyone else ahead of herself. Look at her when she had no money. She didn't want to upset Patrick, so she didn't tell him that she was basically living on pasta and tomato sauce for like weeks and days on it and a single biscuit. She didn't want to worry anyone. She didn't want anyone to be concerned about her. I don't think it's because she wanted to keep it hidden because she was embarrassed, although you kind of got that impression.
Some aspects of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was mainly because she didn't want to burden everyone else with her problems, and that's Denise. I don't think it's fair for Chelsea to feel that way. It makes me think that perhaps Chelsea and Peter might have a very close relationship once she's...
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, once she's stayed on the square.
Whatsoever. Because it might be interesting because they're obviously Denise and Ian were a thing at one point, so they'll have notes to share for a start. I think it's going to be interesting. Because obviously Chelsea's going to return not much older, but she's going to be a grown woman now compared to the slightly flighty person that she was when she originally left. I think the last we heard of Chelsea was when they had that little thing with Libby when she came back. and Chelsea had been hiding the fact that Jordan had been staying with her.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was the last we really heard from Chelsea, wasn't it? Because we talk a lot about, when it's a recast, the character tends to be rewritten. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of old Chelsea is in new Chelsea. Because I can't imagine that Chelsea's forgiven Lucas for anything of what happened, and why the hell would she? I think actually what you said about Peter and Chelsea getting on would be interesting, because they're both ex-coke addicts. So, yeah, maybe that will be something that... Because I can imagine current Peter getting back on the drugs quite easily.
Maybe Chelsea will be the shoulder to cry on if he does take that drug train.
Bobby's taken more drugs than Peter has in the past year.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, because Lucas is associated with it, I'm very excited with the introduction of Chelsea.
Well, they have said of Chelsea's return, a brief little sort of snippet that they give you when the characters are coming in, that Chelsea was known for causing trouble when she was originally on the square, and none of that has left her, and she will be causing just as much trouble this term round. So we shall see. We shall see what new Chelsea brings us in terms of story and drama, and it's going to be interesting, I think, to see how she reacts to Raymond.
Yes, God, we forget about Raymond, but yeah, of course, because that's a little baby brother for her. Again,
exactly.
Can you imagine if she resents her baby brother Raymond?
I mean, old Chelsea probably would, but we'll see where new Chelsea goes. But yes, that was Chelsea's This Is Your Life.
Fantastic. So what would be a nice convenient place then for us to talk about Denise and her story this week? She's been trying to set up the perfect Christmas for Raymond, and Kim is kind of on board. Patrick is on board as long as there's a bottle of whiskey or rum.
As rum there,
for him that he can hide under his hat. And we'll also talk about, because it's kind of the same, Honey's Christmas dinner preparation and plans, and how Kim has now gate crashed that as well. And a bit like the choir story, made it all about her in one way or another. But let's first of all talk about how Denise meets up with the pastor, discussed what was Raymond like around Christmas? What does he like? His likes, his dislikes. She was a little bit surprised that he had a whiskey sour, I think. He was having a drink.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, she meets this pastor in the club. Doesn't even meet him in the Vic. She meets him in the club, and this vicar's like, look, the pastor's like, we'll get doubles, yeah? This pastor's up for getting quite drunk with Denise. We like him.
I thought we were going to have him lined up, like these shots lined up.
They'll do Jaeger bombs.
Yeah, every time the name Raymond is mentioned, they just take a shot. And he basically said, just keep it traditional to the best you can, but you don't have to go too much out of your way to change things. But we would really like it if you could have Raymond visit the church on Christmas Day. Fair enough. Seems a reasonable request. Denise, I think, heard it a little bit differently, though, to let's have the most Christian Christmas our household could ever have.
She's like, I think Denise is kind of picturing sort of turning the place into the Waltons by the time that this is done. Yeah, she brings this up with Kim. Kim is predictably not impressed by any of this whatsoever. Kim wants to do what Kim does and party. Patrick, who we should mention, Patrick's back. Hurrah!
I must say, yeah, Patrick returned. Had nothing to say to his son, Issac, even though he left on the revelation that they're, father and son.
No.
I mean, that was, again...
Hey, no, come on. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt for now. We were just saying earlier how we think that they've forgotten stuff, and then it comes back into the forefront. So we'll give you a week.
Give you a week.
2 weeks.
D.I. Gaffney, 2 weeks.
No, we'll give you 2 weeks.
That's the threshold from now on. 2 weeks. The Gaffney threshold, we'll call it from now on.
The Gaffney threshold is 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll see if the Isaac stuff comes back into play soon. But yes. Neither Patrick or Kim are that entertained by the notion of a full-on traditional Christmas. I mean, what do you think? I mean, you can sort of see Denise's point of view. She just wants to make Raymond's transgression as easy as it can be.
I understand where Denise is coming from, but I think Denise has kind of taken what has been advised and picked out certain parts for what she thinks Raymond would want. I think it would be fine if she had a bit of a Fox Christmas, and I think it would be nice. I think Raymond would enjoy it too. Let's not forget, Raymond loves a bit of a dance, a bit of a boogie. When he went into the church, he's waving his arms around. We loved him. We just wanted to give him a great big cuddle when he was like being like super cute. Of course, go to church. That's what he's used to. That's his normality. I don't know how often Denise has been going to church on a Sunday. From the impression I get,
would be my guess.
Well, from the impression I got, the pastor seemed quite surprised that Denise had invited him out for a drink at Ruby's. So
yeah.
I'm not...
Who are you, by the way? Sorry.
Yeah. So I mean,
Pastor probably thought it was on a date. Or something.
So what made Denise suddenly go, oh yeah, okay, we'll go now? I think Denise has good intentions. I just think that she needs to reel it in a little bit.
I mean, Raymond's how old? 3, 4? Like, he's not gonna. What exactly is she thinking? Like, you think she's gonna have to pray before each part of the meal?
He's mouldable. That's what we're going at. You know,
yes.
Ray can be moulded. He's still got a little bit of Mitchell in him, don't forget. So he might have, get him a little toy BB gun and he'll be running around the square shooting people.
He'll be a psycho in about 5 years.
Yeah,
probably.
It won't take long. I think Denise is taking it too far. And what I would say is, if the story was just that Denise was organising Christmas for Raymond, then I think Patrick and Kim would kind of talk her down, and you'd see it on Christmas Day that they'd have a Fox Christmas in the looser term as you can. But because we know Lucas and Chelsea are returning, it feels a bit filler-like, because we know that something else is about to happen. So I'm not too concerned by it.
I think what it is it's sort of the Denise's sort of dream for like a nice quiet Christmas, and ultimately it's going to be anything but. It's going to be broken. It's probably going to be quite a traumatic Christmas for her, all in all. Meanwhile, Kim is busy trying to help in her best possible Kim way with Honey's, because Honey similarly to Denise had quite a nice sort of civil idea for Christmas and just wanted to do a nice little meal for all the people that were not having a lot of food at Christmas. And by the time Kim's finished, Kim manages to turn it into a stripping Santa with a 6-pack.
Oh, I have to say that seeing Issac strip was fine. There's nothing wrong with that scene whatsoever.
No, I thought that scene was very well filmed.
It was remarkably well filmed. Did you feel like
good lighting
when you saw Karen, Honey, and Kim on the sofa, like right at the beginning? Did you feel like it was like a girl band being produced?
Yes, a little bit.
It really felt like that way for me. It
felt kind of like the Little Mick show that's been on BBC One recently.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good.
Yeah, so ultimately it turns out that Mitch is going to be, what was it, Bad Santa?
Yeah, no. So basically,
much to Billy's chagrin.
Yeah, so this is basically the shoehorned Billy Mitch story, because Billy needs something to do to warrant his paycheck, and it's just well, I'm sorry, but like I like Karen and Billy as a couple. I really do. When they first got together, which was way back in February, so you can see where the progression has really happened here. It was a fine actually. I thought actually, yeah, this is good because it gets Billy out of the whole Honey loop, and
yeah, they do work together. I think they're sort of on the same sort of status level. I think in terms of general life, aren't they? I don't see what Mitch sees in Karen, and I'm trying to say that in the nicest way possible.
I think he sees in Karen a family, and it's just an instant kind of setup. That's what Mitch sees in Karen.
Billy's Christmas is going to end up with Karen and Mitch probably getting back together at some point, and then on the other side, going to be Honey and Jay sort of getting it together as well.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I do relish the fact that Billy's going to have a miserable Christmas, let's be honest.
He always has a miserable Christmas. He has a miserable life.
Oh, I know. But this is my point. I mean, EastEnders isn't exactly like, flowers and joy, obviously. No. But at least characters have like ups and downs of, good and bad. And
Billy's just flat.
Billy's just flatlined. And this goes to show my point that I make practically every week, that there is nothing
week.
You can. I know.
Every week.
I'm boring everyone, but there's nothing left for Billy. And the one glimmer of hope there was, which was Billy and Karen's relationship, and they're destroying it with Mitch. And I don't like Mitch very much either. But
no.
And so it's so every single part of the story of the Karen, Mitch and Billy love triangle, inverted commas, where Mitch is trying to get Karen back from Billy. And I think, to be honest with you, I think the only reason Mitch is doing it is as almost as like to say that he can. That's the only reason he's doing it. As soon as Karen takes Mitch in, Mitch is going to get bored and end up. The
challenge is gone then, hasn't it? It's the sort of person Mitch is. Yeah.
And so that's and I hate that they've basically resorted Karen down to this character, because the actress is more than capable to do more. I want them to do something with her and Bernie. There must be something they can do together, other than Karen becomes a lesbian for a week and then Bernie gets all like, to almost relate to her. And that was just ridiculous.
I miss Bernie so much.
Bernie
has not been in. Has Bernie even been in it since the show returned?
She has.
Twice.
She has.
Twice,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
I think she's had like a handful of. She's had no more than about 5 episodes.
She's had less than that many lines. She's had like probably 5 words in total.
To Teddy.
Yeah, just don't cheapen Karen in this way by giving her this ridiculous story with 2 characters that, quite honestly, can just go away. All right, so let's move on. Stuart and Rainie. Stuart and Rainie, they didn't have much to talk about this week, but what they did have to talk about was basically me being right, but being wrong at the same time, because I was like, I don't care about what they did off the square.
No,
then
they could have done anything and you would have been delighted with it last week.
Yeah, I was like, no, I don't care. I want them to move on with the surrogacy story. This week, they told us what they did off the square, and it was super evil, and it's what I originally wanted their couple to be. They're nasty, and they've got intentions to kill, and they get off on it as well. And so It was really mad that I was like, oh my God, I was right but wrong at the same time, and my mind just went boom, and I had to refix my head like Humpty Dumpty.
I mean, I've got to be honest. As much as I did laugh a lot. Rainie basically being so turned on by the fact that Stuart had killed somebody. What I wasn't enjoying as much was the fact that it so casually made Stuart into a killer, which I think that it's so easy to forget that, you know, you're turning a soap character into a killer. Killing somebody is the worst thing you can do.
Well, it gives them a shelf life, and that's a bit worrying.
And I wasn't keen on the fact that they did it so casually as well. Just, oh, by the way, Stuart killed somebody. That should be a massive moment in a character's history.
But don't you think the reaction from Rainie was?
It was hilarious.
It was hilarious, but it was also spot on, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I think that it does exactly answer. What it does is, because what you were saying is you wanted Stuart and Rainie to be this messed up couple that kind of just did these appalling things and just absolutely loved that they were doing them. And I think what you were given was the fact that they are more than happy to be those people, but the situation happened that it didn't actually work out that way, despite the fact that they originally thought it had. Because Stuart thought that he had killed DS Gaffney, and it got a bit confusing though, because he said that he put him in the freezer.
Yeah.
And then into a box. So at some point, he must have seen Gaffney's body going into this box.
Well, how long was D.I. Gaffney in the freezer for?
Well, this is what I mean. I don't understand
that would have killed him if he wasn't dead already.
I don't understand how any of this is. How this man must be made of Teflon. Yeah, I don't get how he survived any of what happened to him.
Because presumably the attack Stuart had done on D.I. Gaffney, because obviously the timeline on EastEnders was, I think everything that happened this week happened over a day and then a half a day, from the impression I got. So the Monday's episode was literally the next day after Rainie's return. So Stuart would have hit D.I. Gaffney the day before that. So if he put him in the freezer, D.I. Gaffney has been frozen for 48 hours before being then put into a box, which he then thawed out of and ran away from. Because then later on, Callum brought up quite in passing, it's like, oh yeah, D.I. Gaffney turned up for his hearing today. I mean, what did D.I. Gaffney just turn up in the same suit, bloodstained with cuts? I just don't. It was a bit mad.
I would like icicles hanging from his nose.
Yeah. I mean, it's been cold in the UK, but not that cold.
Yeah, it didn't make a huge amount of sense, but do you know what? Out of any pair of characters that would be given that sort of crazy story, and for it to be all right, it was going to be Stuart and Rainie, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I do adore them so
insanely, it works.
Yeah. Does that disappoint you a little bit? Because it did. A little bit of me was a bit disappointed. I know you said like it was very. But I liked the fashion in which Stuart said, "Oh, you know, I killed D.I. Gaffney," and I kind of liked it. Like you said, it works because it's Stuart and Rainie. But did you feel disappointed because
I know what you
found out that they hadn't done it?
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's like I say though, what it's done is shown us that side of them is there. So that's been answered. That sort of itch has been scratched. You know, for the characters to have that. I have to say, I'm sort of relieved that I never thought I'd say this. Relieved that DS Gaffney is alive because, like I say, not because of him. Trust me, but because it doesn't make Stuart so casually a killer. I wasn't keen on that aspect of it.
I mean, this brings up the whole argument again of the Dylan Box thing. Did he kill Dylan Box? Because he's very casual about that as well, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I will be surprised if we ever hear the name Dylan Box ever again.
They would though. They need to bring.
So do I.
They need to either bring him back so we know that Stuart hadn't done it, because then that kind of clears Stuart and Rainie. Because there's always going to be. Again, I'm repeating myself. There's always going to be that stigma about Stuart. What did he do to Dylan Box? And they need to clear it up.
I mean, I think it gives Stuart some leeway in the bedroom, apparently, because
gives him an edge.
I think if Rainie's disappointed, I've got a headache and you didn't kill Gaffney. Yeah, but I killed Dylan Box. Oh take me, you know. Kind of gives him that.
Show him the passport, because he must still have Dylan Box's passport as well.
Oh, probably.
Actually, that's a point. Doesn't he owe Phil money for that? Because he loaned money from Phil. I've completely forgot about that. That still hasn't been cleared up. So Stuart
you're right. Yeah,
Stuart still owes Phil money.
Oh, to be fair though, about half the square owes Phil money at some point. Shirley owes Phil about £17,000. Phil doesn't appear to be missing the money, seeing as though that 10 grand, 100 grand can be just thrown left, right, and centre to whoever is bribing them this week. So I think
Phil's pockets are just so deep. They're as deep as his back pocket for his baseball bat. His money pockets are exactly the same. It's just
exactly. Well, apparently, I'm assuming Gaffney's going to show up again at some point.
Yeah,
I'm afraid that's going to happen. I think that's the end of this week's discussion of the stories. Is it?
I think so.
Is it?
So yes, that is the end of the week, and we're now going to read out some of your comments that you sent to us on I Ain't One to Gossip.
You know me, I ain't one to gossip.
We've got some nice comments first one from Jess McVeigh. You'll like this one, Alex.
Okay.
Jess says, Kheerat was on fire this eve. I'm with Alex on this one. Fire emoji. That's the comment, but I thought I'd give it to I thought I'd let you have that one.
Who was that from, sorry?
It's from Jess McVeigh.
Jess McVeigh. I'm just going to talk to you directly, Jess. This is just for you. You and we're going to start an appreciation club for Kheerat. We are going to get him. We should get T-shirts printed. Let me know. You do the research. I'll get the money. Okay. But no,
start a fundraiser.
Yeah. Go fund me. He is just amazing. I mean, I like the actor. I like the character. Obviously, it's a bonus that he's easy on the eye. He's just great. Yeah, more Kheerat, please. We've said Hannah Sars.
Your voice goes so high pitched when you talk about Kheerat. It's hilarious.
I'm just smitten. Just absolutely.
You are.
He's a great. Like I say, he's just an all rounder. He can sing, dance, and and act.
Versatile, is he?
He's very versatile.
Malcolm Harvey says, I cannot believe that they are making Linda cheat on Mick with Max. Linda would never have done that to Mick, especially since she knows him better than anyone else. She would see the pain and support him. The whole Carter family fracture is terrible. Shame they did that to one of the best loving families to ever be in the square.
We've said this, haven't we?
I mean, I'd argue that Mick's not doing himself any favours at the minute. He's pushing everybody away. It's a massive shame that Mick and Linda have come to this, but in some ways, was it unavoidable?
I think it all comes down to, actually, that if Max hadn't been in the equation, Linda wouldn't have had the opportunity to take a temptation. So if Max wasn't there, then it probably would never have happened. If
Max wasn't there, no affair story would ever be.
Well, no, there would be no affairs whatsoever.
No,
absolutely.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens after Max leaves. No affair stories whatsoever.
I've got one. At Tiffs Dean on Twitter says, I'm probably one of the very few liking the story. I know we aren't supposed to, but there's something there with Max and Linda. Plus, I feel like Linda works so much better away from the Carters. Now, I'm going to dissect that real quick, because I have said that, or I think we both have said that before.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. We said about this, didn't we? About who, if one of them was going to work better without the other, now they're outside of the Vic.
Yeah, we did say that I think Mick wouldn't and Linda would. And is this basically strength for the argument then, that basically Linda has lots more to come, but Mick is a bit of a tricky one?
Let's think about this for a second. I think it's quite evident that Linda's a great character. There's no denying that. And the fact that, she has been taken from the Vic and put in all places the laundrette. And actually she's kind of working there, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's a very adaptable character. And it's kind of, I know Mick's got this story going on at the minute, but they've not given him another job yet. He's still sort of unemployed and doing the odd bar shift, which is what he's been doing since he arrived in the square. So how adaptable is Mick as a character?
Well, he had that market store just before they left the Vic, didn't they? When they sold up the Mick,
the Queen Mick, yeah.
When they sold up the pub, Ben and I talked about how, obviously this is where it's heading. Mick's going to end up with a market store. It didn't, and so I suppose there's that. But then they're not really. I think it's difficult for them to focus on the market at the moment because it's difficult for them to film with COVID. However, I must say another quick. I doff my cap to you, EastEnders filmmakers. There's never a scene outside where it doesn't feel busy.
No.
It's again fantastic. Like, there's a lot of cast on the outside and they're kind of all mulling around, and you don't get that with any other soap. No,
honest to God. Honest to God, the other soaps are just looking so, I only really watch Corrie, but Corrie is so awkward looking at the minute.
It looks barren.
It does, and you can tell that they're far apart, and they'll even throw in gratuitous shots of the actors being far apart, as if to tell the viewers, look, we're doing the rules properly. You know, and it just completely takes you out of what you're supposed to be watching. And EastEnders, you just haven't got that in a minute. John San, you know, he's got a directorial background, and it really shows at the moment. You know, I think that any of the scenes that would be affected by social distancing, you just don't know it to look at the soap at the minute. And that would be the end of this week's comments. You can contact us on Twitter and Instagram at Walford Weekly. Facebook, look for Walford Weekly Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please do not forget like, subscribe, and click the hell out the bell to get notifications about our spoiler videos. You can also listen to us on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, or any of your favourite podcast sites. You can email me or Alex, robwalfordweekly@gmail.com, or alexwalfordweekly@gmail.com. Don't forget to be safe, be kind, take care of each other. We will see you next week.
I was going to say, just to let you guys know, we're going to be a day late because of the Boxing Day episode that's being shown on Saturday. So the episode of Walford Weekly next week will be on Monday, the 28th of December. So you're going to have to eat your turkey sandwiches without us for one extra day, I'm afraid.
So in which case then, we wish you the merriest of Christmases. It's it's a weird Christmas this year, but we hope that you can make of it what you can and have fun together.
Ho, 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 have a good day.
Green Giant.
Peter Bill. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Fair play to every. I know John Sen's got a massive part in this to play, you know, because he's just directing and he looks. Grow up.
Speak for yourself.